Good morning. So for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Kate and I am a trauma-informed clinical hypnotherapist, practitioner and coach, and I help women to break free from the overwhelming effects of anxiety and childhood trauma, mainly linked to the result of domestic abuse, so that they can move forward to a brighter and happier future. And it is possible, ladies, I promise you. I always lose connection when I'm walking at that point. It's really bizarre. Now this definitely isn't going to be a long one this morning because I've got to jump on another Facebook Live with Joe Swan for a welcome introduction to her membership. So I just wanted to jump on and talk to you about the connection between, I don't know who's on, by the way, say good morning, the connection between ADHD, autism, in both adults and children, but obviously mainly children, I'm looking at here, and childhood trauma, or being exposed to, things like, a parent with an addiction, or witnessing domestic abuse in the home, or, generally toxic environments in the home. Maybe they've got other siblings that have difficult behaviours. All these things in children who have developed these traits, these traits that are on the spectrum, these behaviours that are on the spectrum, I would hazard a guess from a young age, don't forget, because trauma can be linked to absolutely anything. Trauma is not always really, really horrendous experiences like, sexual abuse, physical abuse, domestic abuse, which is obviously psychological abuse, witnessing addictions and things like that. It's not always linked to that, which is what we generally associate trauma with. But it can be literally something as really simple as mum and dad were just emotionally unavailable. Or it could be that, I don't know, maybe in school there was a subject that maybe they weren't super academic in school, and they felt inferior toward, against their other school friends and things. Hello. I've got a dog that's just come up to me and said hello. So, if those experiences are deemed as inescapable, it will always be stored as trauma, particularly when there's an overwhelming emotion attached to that event. But of course, when we're dealing with children who have developed these traits that are on these traits and behaviours that are on the spectrum from a really, really young age, it can't be as a result of those things. It's got to be something really quite dramatic to have that impact. So obviously I know from my own experience with Sophia, and I mean, for years I've been trying to get her support through the paediatrician, through CAMS, through early help, through school, and although she gets a little bit of help, but it's not what she needs. I've been literally banging at this for about 3 years, and I even booked her in to see a child psychologist. Well, actually I went to go and get a consultation of a child psychologist privately because I was getting so frustrated with the system. And even he stepped in and said, no, the system should be providing something for her. And even with the letter that he did, I'm still to this day not really got anywhere. But since I've done all my training, and I have implemented a lot of these tools with Sophia, I have seen, and obviously going no contact with her dad, has made a massive difference, because I've taken her out of that toxic situation. Although obviously that, there's still elements there that are still flagging her internal alarm system, like the house that we're in and things like that. But I can't resolve that problem until the finances are settled with my delightful ex. But by removing the biggest chunk of the problem, which was him, and implementing some of these tools and understanding where she is on her nervous system and what triggers her to drop at different levels of that emotional regulatory ladder, and understanding what she actually needs from me to make her feel safe. And that's the key here. It's their system that doesn't feel safe, and their system is responding with parts. So those parts could be aggression, it could be retreating within themselves and going really subdued, and not speaking much, and not wanting to socialize, and those parts are there to protect them. So until we resolve those wounds, those parts are always going to show up. So I went into a group that is got a lot of obviously mums with children on the spectrum, and I just asked the simple question: how many have experienced domestic abuse? How many kids have witnessed domestic abuse, addiction, or you as the mother had a traumatic pregnancy whilst carrying the child? And I would say out of over 50 comments, there was probably about 45 where they said, no, definitely, that's me, that's me, that's me. A handful of them said, no, there's no traumatic experiences, in our family or our home, but their father has ADHD, or such and such has ADHD. So it's a genetical thing. Now, if a parent has been diagnosed with ADHD, then it's fair to say, if they are diagnosed with it, then they are displaying behaviours to that effect. And if they are displaying behaviours, then that child is going to be mirroring, because we have mirror neurons, mirroring those behaviours, because their system's learning that those behaviours represent something. Now, whether that's safety, whether that's feeling empowered, whether that's, because I know Sophia, she mirrors some of her dad's behaviours with me. So she's very, very dominant with me. She wants something, she will blackmail me. Now that is something she's learned. I'm going to walk back this way. That's something she's learned directly from her dad. So, when I've sat down and I've spoken to her about it, she has admitted that, well, Daddy does this, so, because she knows that that's how Daddy gets what he wants. But on the same hand, she doesn't like the fact, she never liked the fact that Daddy would trick Mummy. And that was the word she used. Daddy would trick Mummy. So, Daddy would use this threatening and blackmailing behaviour to get me back in line and get me to conform to what he wanted. And I would resist, and I would resist, but eventually, until I went no contact and everything, she knows that she's learned that eventually I give in. So that is her system mirroring his behaviour as well, that gives daddy what he wants. Well, this is what's going to make me feel secure. And of course, remember, this is all done on a very much an unconscious level. It's not done consciously. The brain's giving you, basically instructing you to behave in a certain way relative to how you're feeling and what it's trying to protect you from. And that has happened long before your active brain's kicked in and acknowledging that instruction, and you rationalizing it. You rationalizing it. But you see, if that wound is so deep, you can sometimes have logic override logic override emotion, but not always, without addressing the encoding. So yeah, it's just something to really think about if you have got a child who's displaying certain traits. Because I mean, in my opinion, although a lot of people relate childhood trauma to a stigma, which is why obviously you find that some people aren't wanting to hold their hands up and say, yeah, okay, my child's been exposed to that. Not that it's any criticism to the parent, it's not, because they're responding accordingly to their system as well. But in my opinion, I think labelling a child with autism or ADHD is just as bad, in my opinion, because bottom line is, it is event-specific biological markers. It is encoding put in place, and the brain's taken snapshots to remind you, hi Sai, to remind you of a past event. That's it. I think that is how, I mean, if these professionals were trauma informed, and sadly they're not, not many of them are trauma informed, they would understand more that it is trauma driven, environmental driven, and the brain's responding accordingly. Explaining it like that, I think, is much better than giving somebody a label, because a label's very stigmatizing for the child. It's very stigmatizing for the parent. They feel judged. They do. They feel different. It's no different to, illnesses, and people, join specific groups for whatever illness they've got. Everything reverts back to pretty much the same thing. So rather than singling yourself out, which causes more insecurity, just try to identify that these issues are as a result of the system not being regulated. There is dis-ease in the body. So whether it's a psychological problem, whether it is a physical ailment, it is as a result of dis-ease in the body. That's it. It's not more complicated than that. So, rather than when you receive a diagnosis, thinking that you are different to everybody else, it's not really. It's just a label that's given for a different area of the body that has particular symptoms. That's the best way you should be looking at it, as opposed to I'm different to everybody else. You know, it's what is unsettling for one person isn't unsettling for another. What affects the body for one person doesn't affect it in the same way for another person. So, but ultimately, everybody who has something wrong with them will be as a result of something causing dis-ease in the body, dysregulation within the body. So that's, you know, just something really to think about, because, you know, obviously feeling like you are different can carry its own stigma, you know, and no more so for children. You know, I genuinely do believe that, you know, teachers, you know, schools generally should be trained in this, you know, because how they respond to children can have a massive impact on their emotional well-being. And I say their emotional well-being has a knock-on effect to their physical well-being. You know, and I say, what is traumatic for one person isn't for another person. You know, so just because, you know, you can look at somebody's, you know, maybe a teacher's approach, or, you know, a parent's approach, and think, oh well, they're actually, you know, not, you know, being unreasonable, and yet they may not be. However, to that child, it's how they are translating it. It's the story that they're attaching to whatever behaviour they're being presented with. And if they deem that as inescapable, and that in the emotional charge is there, that will encode as trauma. So understanding how best to manage that is key. It's not to say that you can't. I mean, you know, you've got to discipline children. You know, I discipline Sophia, but if I see an emotional reaction from her, then obviously I now have the tools to make sure that emotional reaction by me disciplining her doesn't then encode as additional trauma, which is what I don't want to happen. But it makes the world of difference, just by understanding the tools to integrate with certain children if they respond hysterically to a certain approach. So anyway, I hope you found that useful. I'm going to jump off now because I've got to jump on this live, yeah, I shall catch you all again on another live. I say, if anybody wants to jump on a workshop I'm going to be doing on the 12th, you are more than welcome to do so. The link is in one of my posts below, but I will actually put it in my bio or something, I think. Anyway, have a great day, everybody. I don't know what it's like where you are, but in where I am, the sun is shining. It is beautiful. And yeah, I'll catch you all again soon. Bye.